Hey, this is Ree here. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. It really helps me a lot. And don't forget to check out my website, paradoxastrology.com. I can help you with anything. And if you would like exclusive occult videos that I don't post on YouTube, consider subscribing to my Patreon. Okay, let's get into this video. I just want to talk about a couple Kundalini effects that will occur once you get to certain levels. Now, this may not happen for everybody, but they are common effects. So I just want to explain this so you're not afraid if this happens to you. These are two that happened to me and still happen, but one of them has slowed down a little bit. Now, one of them is extreme heat. When I started doing the Kali mantra, I started getting very, very extreme heat waves within my body, like hot flashes. And it was almost like, you know how a toaster, when you plug it in, it's like you see it slowly heating up kind of thing, the rings inside, it's like that within your body. It was very, very uncomfortable. As soon as it would go on, it's like you have to take off your hoodie. You're extremely hot. And this was going on for a while. I think at first like every 10 minutes, and then it was going like every hour. I was concerned. I was like, is there something wrong with me? What's happening? Am I sick? Because I've never experienced that before. I really was wondering if something was wrong with me. And because it's so extreme, it was happening in my solar plexus. And now it happens mostly in my heart. That's actually where we concentrate the energy doing certain mantras in Tantra. And I'm talking about traditional Tantra. I'm not talking about the Western version that you see online, which is a complete misinformation about Tantra. I'm talking about the actual traditional Tantra from India. Now, the heat is so extreme that it would wake me up at night. My ego was getting upset because it didn't understand it, and it was super uncomfortable, and this lasted for months. Got to the point that I was like, how am I gonna live like this? If this is like going to never go away, and it will go away, that's just part of it. What it's doing is burning off the karmas, and it's part of your awakening. It's just part of it. When you get to certain levels, it will do that. And just understand that I've been practicing Tantra for 4 months now, but before that, I've been meditating since 2009. I've had huge spiritual experiences even when I was a child. So before Tantra, I've already experienced Kundalini awakenings, and it's a slow process. But I've never experienced this intense heat, so I wasn't really sure about that. So spirituality is not new to me. I've practiced other things apart from Tantra, which I won't speak of, but a lot of different things I've been doing. So the heat is one of them, and it can be very uncomfortable. It can be kind of scary at times. Now it's slowed down, but I have heat in my heart. My heart burns when I do the mantras only, which is not bad. It's kind of nice because you know something is happening. The other thing that happens is violent shakes of the body, very violent. You could feel the energy rising up, rise all the way up, right? And while it's rising up, if the channels aren't clear, you start shaking. Sometimes when it's clearing the chakra, it starts shaking your entire body, and it's very violent. Like my head will start going like this, like almost like you would think you're possessed, right? And it's shaking and like this. And then it was so violent sometimes that it actually hurt my neck, because sometimes it's hard to stop it. And so I don't want you to be afraid if that happens to you. It is a part of it as well. As the energy is rising, it's clearing out a lot of things, and that is a common occurrence. Sometimes it won't shake the body. Sometimes the energy just goes straight up, and then it starts kind of shaking, and then I'll just feel like an opening. That's something that happens very often to me. Keep in mind, I do mantras for about 3.5 hours, roughly, and I practice yoga as well. So after doing a lot of practices, this happens regularly to me, but that may not happen regularly to someone who's not practicing. So don't take me as an example. This is my life purpose to do. So that's why I'm doing it to that extent. But even if you do practice a small amount of time, these things can occur to you once you start waking up. So the energy shooting to your head as well can be very scary. The one time that it shot to my head, I remembered my past lives, and it was scary because I remembered the things that I did that were negative. And I felt a lot of guilt and shame because of that after coming back, like it was happening to me in this lifetime. That can be a little bit scary too, because you start remembering things and you start understanding why you have karma in this life, and then it can get you depressed a little bit at the time, but you'll get over it. So it can also be very scary because you realize that this is fake. You realize that this life is an illusion and there's so much more, and you're living a false life in ego, and how much your ego is running your life. And that can be very, very scary because you start realizing that you are a false persona. And I still am a false persona. I will say that. The more you do practices, the more you start realizing that you don't know anything. The more I do it, I'm like, I really don't know any. I'm really controlled by my ego. The more I let go of my ego, the more I realize I'm controlled by it. And that can freak you out because you're like, my whole life was a lie. My whole life was inauthentic because I never knew who I am. And I still don't know. I am living a lie now. What do I do? It kind of like gets scary like that. It's kind of like learning the occult, learning astrology. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. But that is the place you want to stay, is in humbleness, because you don't let these things happening, these physical things happening, or also the psychic abilities that come in and things like that. Don't get caught up in that. Okay, that is your own ego, because your ego is going to try to define itself by these things. Oh, I'm so powerful because my body shakes, and then, oh, I'm having this intense heat, so now I'm awakened. No, that doesn't mean you're awakened. And that happens to everybody. Psychic abilities, everybody has that. Okay, don't let your ego caught up thinking it's special because it has that, because that will stop you from your ultimate goal. And your ultimate goal is self-realization. It's understanding the God sense. And that is the ultimate goal of understanding who you truly are, what the world really is. So if you're caught up in what's physically happening, now you're using spirituality to feed your ego. And now you're going to go back into ego. And the point is to disconnect from the physical world and not have to have these physical things happen to you, and to have understanding, to not need the physical to tell you who you are and what you're doing. That's the whole purpose, to know who you are from within. So don't use spirituality to feed your own ego, because a lot of people do that. I have these psychic abilities. I'm able to do this. Guess what? I'm able to do that. Well, everybody can. Now you're talking to me in ego. That's why a lot of spiritual practices are not supposed to be taught. They're not supposed to be spoken about. What I'm just telling you, I'm not even supposed to speak about this because it can develop into an ego. And the reason I am, though, is because I don't want people to be afraid, because I was afraid and I didn't understand and I had no one to explain these things to me. So that's why I like to make videos about this, because then you can understand and not be afraid and then let it go. Because the other thing is, when things don't physically happen and you're used to them happening, you're going to start thinking that you lost your power. And then that's your ego thinking that, oh, nothing physical is happening, so nothing is happening within. No. When you're doing your spiritual practices, when you're meditating, you're doing yoga, something is always happening within. You're changing, right? You're not always going to see that. You're not always going to have the physical manifestations, because that's not the point. The point is you being alone with the God sense, you being in silence and disconnecting, or, well, you're doing mantras, not complete silence, and disconnecting from the physical reality to find out who you truly are. That's the whole point. It's not about the physical. We're supposed to stop relying so much on the physical, but still honoring the physical. We honor it. We understand it. We see it. It helps our ego calm down a little bit and think that, okay, yeah, things are happening, but don't let your ego get caught up in that, because a lot of people get caught up and start thinking they're better than others because they have certain abilities. Oh, well, I've been psychic since I was a kid. I can see ghosts, or I can see apparitions, so I'm more advanced than all these other people. I wish people were advanced like me. You hear that a lot. That's your ego. That's not being advanced. That's being you and ego. We all are one, and we're supposed to have compassion and love for everyone and understand where everyone is at. It's not about someone is better than somebody else. That has nothing to do with anything. Psychic abilities don't mean enlightenment at all. They can go together, but it doesn't necessarily mean enlightenment. I had a lot of abilities and I was still in ego, being materialistic and having psychic abilities, but being materialistic and being able to use my powers for influence rather than good. Okay, so it doesn't mean enlightenment at all. And you will learn this on the path. The point is to shed that. So those are just a few things that can happen that may be kind of scary, but if it happens, it is a good sign. But that is not the goal. It's not the goal to have these physical symptoms, because you'll see videos about Kundalini awakening and then now they're caught up in that. And then now they're only doing the spiritual practices to see if they could get their body to shake again, or if they could, feel the heat again. Now you lost the whole point. I just wanted to make that a little bit clear for anyone who's experiencing certain symptoms. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you in the next one.